let the word go forth.
Fool me once.
Are you fired up?
I'm not a crook.
Are you ready to go?
Shame on you.
It's Abe Lincoln's Top Hat, hosted by Ben Kissel.
Fool me, we can't get fooled again.
All right, welcome to the show, everyone. I am Ben Kissel. That's Marcus Parks.
Hey.
Well, we're just going to do a quick episode here. We're so dang busy. We got to go out to Colorado. We just recorded Eileen Warno's Part 2 for Last Podcast on the Left, so that'll be coming out soon. We've got a bunch of stuff that happened this week. I want to thank everyone who submitted to the Dumpster Fire chats, benk721@gmail.com. Keep them coming, and I will do my best to get you guys an episode every week. You know, again, we are busy, but we love doing it.
Yeah, we do, man. This is our dream job.
And it's such an honor and a privilege to be able to do this for a living. So we had the march. There was a tax march. Mm-hmm. Of course, tax day is coming up here. I think it's today. Holy, I gotta go. I gotta get some taxes done. And of course, Donald Trump refuses to release his taxes. When he was running in 2016, he claimed it was because he was under audit. And evidently, according to Sean Spicer, the man who never lies because he doesn't know what truth is, he says still that there is an audit going on with Donald Trump. Of course, there is nothing stopping him from releasing his taxes well under audit. If he is under audit, he still could release his taxes. And so there was a massive march demanding that he does release his taxes. And Donald Trump, in classic Donald Trump fashion, called the protesters idiots, said, "I won the election. What are you doing out here?" Tweeted at them in a juvenile way because that's what the Trumper does.
Yeah, he asked, one has to wonder who paid these protesters.
No one.
Once again, it's this whole paid protester bullshit that is just dumb.
George Soros would be broke in a week if he paid for all of these people to protest. And I do want to clarify, somebody on Twitter did mention how we've been railing against Donald Trump quite heavily because I haven't been happy with what he's doing. And it is important to remove the policy from the man. And Donald Trump, in my opinion, is so unlikable. It's tough sometimes. Even if he does something that I like, it's tough to agree with. But if he does do something that is good, I promise you we will cover it positively. For he is doing some fairly good things with small businesses. So that is a positive thing of the Trump administration. But currently, I am blinded by the rage of Attorney General Jeff Sessions and what they're doing with immigration. And again, what's happening with his foreign policy. I just don't see where it's going. And now we have a massive situation that's come up in North Korea. We've decided to no longer have the long-standing policy. Marcus, you can find what the policy is. I believe it's strength through patience. It's something like that. You can find an article with Mike Pence. He's over there in the demilitarized zone right now in North Korea. And the North Koreans, they had, of course, led by Kim Jong-un. I equate them to a cult in its waning days. They're fatalistic and horrifying at this point. He had a missile launch, an attempted missile launch, and it failed miserably. It lasted about 4 seconds, which is never good for a missile launch. They had a massive nationalistic parade, and many of those missiles that were touted through Pyongyang are believed to be fake, as a matter of fact. It reminds me of what the Russians used to do. The Russians would throw huge military parades, and they would fly planes and planes and planes and planes over, and the U.S. was like, oh my God, they have to have thousands of these things. They were the same planes.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this stuff is political theater, and Kim Jong-un obviously saber-rattling extremely hard right now, and the Trump administration is as well. Do we want to have a show of military force in North Korea? I don't think it's a good idea, as again, they are fatalistic, and it will be like Vietnam all over again.
Mike Pence said that we're going to abandon the failed policy of strategic patience.
Strategic patience, which is, the U.S. has, we've been using our diplomacy for years on North Korea. Nothing has really changed. The regime, it seems to be getting more militarized, more fanatical as time goes on. Obviously, Kim Jong-un, the third generation, they tend to get more hawkish, and he wants to make a name for himself. Donald Trump has now tried to attach himself and get in the good graces of the Chinese, no longer calling them a currency manipulator. The Chinese offer about 90% of all the goods in North Korea. And so we'll see if they're going to be able to sort of use some diplomatic strategies in order to disarm or at the very least disincentivize the North Koreans from acting in such a manner.
Well, Trump tried to go back a little bit on the whole currency manipulator thing in a tweet where he said something along the lines of not a good idea to call China. Why would I call China a currency manipulator when they're working with us on North Korea?
Right.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Donald Trump also in his brilliance, when Ronald Reagan, and yes, again, it's Ronald Reagan, I say it right, when he gave his amazing speeches regarding Gorbachev and the wall, regarding disarming the Soviet Union, basically won us the Cold War through a lot of rhetoric and, of course, a lot of backdoor diplomacy. Donald Trump's version of the great speeches that Reagan gave was Kim Jong-un has to behave. He said he has to behave like a school child who refuses to sit down during class. He just said Kim Jong-un has to behave. So that's the level of intelligence that Donald Trump is bringing to the conversation, and it's. Thankfully, there are people around him that understand world affairs and current events much more. We just hope the cooler heads prevail. And quite frankly, the last dumpster fire, I just railed against Mike Pence for gay conversion therapy, his terrible stance on immigration, so many things. In this situation, he is the only member of the White House, from the White House, who is acting presidential. Mm-hmm. And if you look at Mike Pence, if you go back and watch the season 1 of House of Cards, which I'm rewatching season 4 because season 5 comes out on May 30th, it's the only show I follow.
I love that show.
It's a great show. I love Robin Wright so much. Mike Pence reminds me a lot of Frank Underwood, starting out as the VP, and you wonder if he doesn't try to position himself to be the president if Donald Trump isn't able to last all 4 years. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now internationally.
Yeah, well, what you said earlier about people saying that, we have to separate the policies from the man.
Yeah.
The reason why it's hard to do that is because Donald Trump was elected president by selling himself.
Yes, he was.
If you listen to his speeches, it's all I, me, my.
Mm-hmm.
He takes credit for everything. He does not separate the policies from himself.
No, and this is why it's such a difficult pivot for him to have when he goes 180 on situations like NATO and foreign intervention, because he did sell himself. To your point, Marcus, is so he sold Trump the brand.
Trust me.
And trust him. Exactly.
That was his catchphrase. Trust me. Believe me.
With his mesmerizing circular hand motions. He sold Trump the brand. He sold us some Trump steak, and it turns out when it came to our door, it was a bunch of rotten fish. And that's what's going on. And that's why a lot of the people who were his core supporters, even though most people, rational people, saw through the BS that Donald Trump was spewing on the stage, as he would just roll with the crowd. Whatever the crowd would say, Donald Trump absorbed it and spewed it right back to them. He was a perfect mirror of the crowds that he was presenting himself in front of to become the president of the United States. And so that's why people are quite upset with him for his pivots on these massive, important issues. And again, I wouldn't necessarily be against the strike in Syria if there was a policy backing it that was reasonable. I think the mother of all bombs that was dropped over in Afghanistan, upwards of 90 ISIS soldiers were killed. Supposed ISIS soldiers, we don't really know. Of course, the media is just going to go with that narrative because it suits their MO, which is creating profits for their advertisers, and their advertisers are going to make a lot of money if we're in another war. So Donald Trump is, but I wouldn't have necessarily disagreed with the strikes in Syria if I felt there was a rational policy backing it up. I'm not there with Donald Trump at this point. I don't trust him, and that's it. There's another.
He's given us absolutely no reason to trust him on anything.
And a lot of his core supporters are there is a buyer's remorse. As a matter of fact, there's an individual who is suing the Trump administration, claiming that Donald Trump incited him to commit violence at one of his campaign rallies, which is
he was just following orders.
He was just following orders, and if you recall, and to some degree, the man is right. I don't think he has any legal grounds for my understanding of it. But Donald Trump would say, "Oh, you don't hurt him. It's not the good old. If it was the good old days, we've had ways to handle these kinds of people."
Well, it was the one where Trump said, "Get him out of here.
Yeah,
get him out of here.
Take his coat."
Yeah.
And so there is no denying that his rhetoric certainly wasn't. He didn't calm the situation by any means.
Absolutely not. But I'm sure that guy is that's saying that Trump forced him into some sort of violence. What a willful removal of responsibility from himself. I mean, that is a complete and total bullshit act.
And the guy was 76 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't you at that point you should have enough of a core set of principles that you can't be encouraged to commit an act of violence against somebody much younger than he was.
Well, it's the excuse that a teenager gives.
Exactly, and there is a lot, and that's what it seems like right now. There isn't an adult in the room, and that's what we're seeing as the White House had a difficult time and lied about their Easter celebrations that happened over the weekend as well. I mean, this was cartoonish what occurred. Sean Spicer lied about the number of eggs they were going to have for the children, and because they're like, yeah, I think they had 18,000 or something like that. And he's like, this is the normal number, and it's far lower than the normal number of Easter eggs. I understand how stupid and juvenile this conversation is, but we have to have it because they lie about such strange things that we can't trust them on the large issues. And that's why it's significant that we have a certain amount of faith in the integrity of our president, because life and death issues are on the line.
Well, that's what compulsive liars do. Compulsive liars lie about small shit that doesn't matter.
Yeah, and why? It just makes their life more difficult.
It makes their life more. They can't help it, and it's like an administration that is the personification of a compulsive liar.
Right, and that's why we have Sean Spicer up there every single day giving his press conferences, and he's having a difficult time following the lies, and that's why he stumbles so often, and that's why, of course, he makes gaffes like he did, equating Assad to Hitler, arguing that Assad was worse than Hitler because Hitler never used gas. Obviously, Hitler used gas quite a bit. It's quite a famous time of history.
Zyklon B.
That all of us know. However, I do think that was we talked about a little bit about that on the last episode. The Trump administration. I don't believe that Donald Trump is anti-Semitic personally. Jared Kushner is his closest aide right now. He's a devout man of Jewish faith. Ivanka has converted to Judaism, and of course Ivanka is very close with her father, President Trump. So I don't believe he's anti-Semitic, but it does play into the larger narrative that the alt-right has helped propel Donald Trump to the White House, and are now obviously feeling extremely embarrassed and abandoned. We also have to talk about Alex Jones, my favorite story of the week. Alex Jones is currently fighting to maintain custody of his children after a divorce in 2015, which leads you to believe he had custody.
He did,
and his children are 9 to 14 years of age. And I'm kind of going back and forth on this. Is Alex Jones the greatest father of all time, or is he horrifying? Because a part of me could just be like, he's fun dad.
Yeah.
He just rips off his shirt and we barbecue and he screams all day.
He probably is fun. I mean, honestly, he probably is fun dad.
But the thing that was revealed that I thought was the most interesting, speaking of Donald Trump and his performance, it was revealed in the court documents from Alex Jones's lawyer. His wife was arguing that he can't be trusted with the children to have custody because he's so bombastic, hyperbolic, with what he says on his radio show and his internet broadcast. So his lawyer said he's a performance artist and nothing that he says should be taken seriously, which completely counteracts and contradicts what Alex Jones presents himself to be. And there are core believers in the info war. I call it, again, it's monetized lies. It is he has found a way to get clicks and get eyeballs on his product, and that's why he's able to sell defense shield sprays and ridiculous amounts of true snake oil salesman products. But I thought that was an interesting thing to hear from this week, that alt-right, that sort of InfoWars brand, along with Donald Trump, they're being revealed for the scam artists that they are. And it's tough for people like Marcus, myself, and even Henry to some degree to understand how people could fall for the act. But it's very easy. He's very convincing, and he's very dedicated to his performance art.
I think there's a lot of people that listen to Alex Jones. I don't know.
It's confirmation bias, don't you think?
I mean, a lot of it's confirmation bias, but I'm not really sure when he turned from just kind of a fun thing to listen to. Because for us, we've been listening to Alex Jones for years, and he was like, we loved it. It was a fun, weird thing. And every once in a while, he would actually make a good point. Here and there, he would actually make a good point. But then a few years ago, there was just this weird turn that he made, this weird nationalistic turn. And he kind of went on the road to where he has ended up today. His his intense support of Trump. His intense identification with the alt-right. He took this weird turn, but the thing is that weird turn is what put him to the national stage.
Absolutely.
From a fringe conspiracy theory
Whack
guy,
job. Almost on par with David Icke.
Yeah.
The man who believes that reptilians run the world.
Yeah,
on par with him.
On par with him, close to that. But then once he really started getting into this nationalistic stuff, once he started becoming dangerous, truly dangerous, because Alex Jones, for as much as we make fun of him, as much as we make light of him, Alex Jones has turned into a very dangerous figure.
Well, and because he's turned into an influential voice in America, which is never a good thing when you have those sorts of entertainers being normalized, and that's exactly what's happened. Now, of course, back into the politics world, Adam Schiff, he is the Democrat who is sort of leading the charge in the Russian investigation. Alex Jones threatened Adam Schiff with death. He threatened to kill the man, which possibly is a felony.
Yeah.
So there is a chance that Alex Jones actually catches charges, for lack of a better term, regarding his conversations about Adam Schiff and the threat on Adam Schiff's life, which is another thing that that is brought up in the lawsuit, so his wife can keep the children. But I don't want to get into his personal life. That's all him. And he might be a wonderful father. That does not concern us one bit here. And I hope all that stuff works out.
Who knows? I mean, yeah, we can't speak to his his actions as a father, but we can say that he preyed on the fears of millions of people and personally profited from it.
And now we're seeing individuals from the alt-right and this new group. They're called the alt-left, which I hate both of these terms, but this is sort of the common nomenclature now. They're called Antifa. They're anti-fascist, but they are dressing like ISIS for some reason, and I'm not quite sure why. It seems as if we have new factions, and it's very polarized with both of these extremist philosophies, even though being anti-fascist should not necessarily be extremist. However, they do act in ways that that is violent, as we saw again on the day that we had the march for Donald Trump to reveal his taxes. There was immense amount of clashing.
What happened?
Berkeley.
What happened with that?
Well, that was between alt-right Trump supporters and this group Antifa, and so it just it bubbled over from a lot of shouting into an all-out brawl. I mean, it was a real riot situation, and both sides are to blame. Anytime you're doing something that requires you to cover your face, you should ask yourself what you're doing.
Yeah.
And why don't you want yourself to be known? You must be doing something wrong if you don't want people to know who you are. And that's my same thing with people who hide themselves on Twitter or hide themselves in real life. Claim what you say. And own it and deal with the ramifications of your actions and deal with the ramifications of your words. And I think for the most part, you'll be judged appropriately. So so this new movement, the alt-left, it's just it's the alt-right, but for people who are obviously consider themselves more leftist, some communists in there, socialists, and definitely not Trump supporters in any stretch of the imagination. And I wouldn't even argue that they're Democrats, the same way I don't argue that Trump supporters are Republicans. I mean, these are really unique entities that we're seeing for the first time kind of pop up in this country because of social media, and again, because of individuals who stoke the fire and fuel the flames of hatred and rage like Alex Jones. And that's why, there are a couple of senators out there that I really do like. I like Al Franken on the left. I think he's doing a good job of trying to maintain a sort of moderate tone. As we talked about previously on the show, him not telling Jeff Sessions to resign, but rather recuse himself from the Russian investigation, which obviously happened. And then there's a fellow out of Nebraska named Ben Sass, who I think is a real charming dude and another politician. Who we need to keep an eye on. Also, there is the situation now that's happening in Marcus. We can find this out. The Democrats have a big chance. I believe the vote was today.
In Georgia.
In Georgia. This is sort of considered the first referendum on Donald Trump. This is a very conservative district. There is a documentarian, a filmmaker who is running for the seat. And let's see if we can get his name and see what's going on there.
His name is John Ossoff.
Okay, John Ossoff. He's a 30-year-old man. He's charming. And who is the man that currently holds the seat, the Republican?
Tom Price. It became vacant when Tom Price became Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary.
Okay, so this is sort of the first time where we have a power vacuum that needs to be filled. This is, and of course, again, this is a very conservative district, and the fact that Ossoff is doing so well as a Democrat and a fairly liberal Democrat at that. Is boding very well to the Democratic Party, which is currently no longer talking about no longer talking negatively about money in politics, because they are raking it in. Mm-hmm. So whenever you're getting the money, you're quite fond of money in politics. but when you're on the losing end of that stick, you don't like it so much. Of course, Hillary Clinton outspent Donald Trump immensely during the 2016 campaign. So Democrats, they can't wash their hands of the blood money that happens all over the national political scene here in America. So that's a very close race to watch in Georgia. And if Ossoff is able to win, it bodes very well for the Democrats going into 2018. Is there that much Trump backlash in this country that will allow a district like this to flip over and go with the Democrat? I believe at this point, Donald Trump is currently hovering at 37% approval ratings. The bump that he got after the Syrian strike is sort of the hangover is gone, and the nationalism and the rally around the flag. People have stopped dancing to the beat of war, to the drum beat of war, and have sort of come back to have him at the poll numbers that he's been sort of sitting at his entire 90 some days. It's unbelievable. We're not even 100 days into this yet.
Yeah, I think it's 92 or 93.
So he's back at 37% or 35% or upwards of 40% given the margin of error. Either way, he's the lowest. This is the lowest in modern history of any new president. Again, we tend to give them the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. And Donald Trump immediately got off on the wrong foot, lying about crowd size. Now he's lying about Easter eggs, and now God knows what's going to happen with his foreign policy overseas. I think the country is very unnerved. For the first time, the North Korean threat, it always has been serious, and maybe the Americans just haven't been looking at it closely enough. It's certainly magnified right now.
We made a puppet movie about it.
We did make a puppet movie about it.
Team America World Police, which is fantastic.
It is. It's a lot better than the other one that had all the protests. What was the name of the one?
Oh, yeah, the Seth Rogen, James Franco one.
That was so stupid.
I never watched it. But Team America World Police, if you've never seen it, go watch it. It is amazing. It's Trey Parker and Matt Stone. It's fantastic.
It's going to drive me nuts. What was the name of that movie? We have to find out. We have to give the people the information for this movie that probably has 10% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It does not have The Interview.
The Interview, that's right. Of course, that was pulled from movie theaters because the North Koreans were absolutely livid and supposedly caused the now infamous Sony hack, which permeated all across Hollywood because we got to see what scumbags producers are. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that, Kim Jong-un, I guess. So there's a lot of stuff happening regarding North Korea, and of course, these ballistic missile tests are scary to say the least. However, I don't believe they have the technology that they're pretending they do have. Again, my understanding of it, many of those missiles that were touted out during the nationalistic parade in North Korea were totally fake, because people were like, either they developed an entirely new missile or it's paper mache.
Yeah, and I think people there are some people that I think are overreacting to this quite a bit. There's a lot of people that are screaming World War III right now, and we are not. I don't think we're anywhere close to that point right now. I don't think we're not close to North Korea wiping Los Angeles off the map or anything like that. Like, it's not. We're not at war with North Korea. It's not there yet. These things can still pull it out. We've got some very brilliant military minds working for the Trump administration. And, so I don't think anyone really wants war with North Korea because there's nothing in it.
There's nothing in it for us whatsoever. It would just be a total nightmare. And Mike Pence did continue that when discussing we're no longer going to have the strategic patience. He did discuss, diplomacy being, key and crucial to his ideas of solving the North Korean problem. But Donald Trump just... he's not acting like John F. Kennedy did during the Cuban Missile Crisis by any stretch of the imagination when he tweets negative things about North Korea. This plays horribly on the international stage, and those are the things. Those are the extremely significant foreign policy decisions that presidents have to make. Again, life and death decisions that Donald Trump flippantly tweets about. That's what makes people so unnerved. Mm-hmm. North Korea hasn't changed. They've been extremely militaristic, fascist regime for decades upon decades. They haven't changed one bit. The thing that has changed is the person in the White House tweeting about them. And again, North Koreans, they use that as strong propaganda. It's a strong propaganda tool against the United States. There were some interviews done with North Koreans at the parade, at the military parade, and of course, without a doubt, they believe they can destroy the United States, and they're more confident than ever before. And when Donald Trump does those, when he tweets about those extremely significant foreign policy, decisions that will have to be made further down the road, it unnerves the American people, and it destabilizes the entire world. I mean, that's how significant the position of president is.
Well, Donald Trump has said again and again that the reason why he uses Twitter is so he can have a direct voice to the people.
Sure.
I'm not sure why people need a direct voice on this. I'm not sure why this is something that he needs to directly address people about. I don't get the benefit of it.
If you wanted to direct the people, if you wanted to have a direct conversation with the people, go to the Oval Office, sit down, do exactly what, Ronald Reagan did an amazing job of it. Bill Clinton did a very good job of it. Sit down and speak to the American people. Calmly, rationally. Don't just answer a reporter's question regarding Kim Jong-un and say he's behaving badly, because this is not an NBC sitcom. He's not Charlie Sheen. This is very real stuff. And so I do agree with your point, Marcus. I think it is a bit overblown, but Donald Trump isn't doing the country any favors by stoking the fears. And of course, again, war is a great uniter, and I think the Trump administration I think Donald Trump could find himself going that way in order to get his approval ratings up, and it just works time and time and time again, and it's just one of those unfortunate facts about human beings and human nature. We tend to come together in times of trauma and separate in times of peace. So anyway, we got to wrap this episode up because we got a lot of work to do, but we will see everyone in Colorado.
Absolutely.
Cannot wait to see you. And thank you guys so much for listening. You can go to the Abe Lincoln's Top Hat merch page here on CCR, get some t-shirts and all that stuff. And the campaign is going great. I promise you I'll never stop doing the shows. I wrote my first campaign ad.
Ooh.
And it is in there. I am keeping my job because, like you, we're sick of career politicians.
That's right.
We're working people here. So you can go to BK for BK, and we're going to get some policies up there. And, it's been a wonderful experience. I'm really excited about all that stuff. And if you are in town, the 24th, 10:30 to noon, at the steps of City Hall, I'm going to be there for the Close Rikers Island rally, which I think absolutely has to be done. And I just wrote an article that hopefully is published in the Daily News stating some reasons why. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
For more shows like the one you just listened to, go to cavecomedyradio.com.